The war in South America continues to rage. One of the biggest unreported stories, other than the issues with the Fitzgerald and the McCain, I think, of the last year. The channel has always maintained that we are going to stay on things that affect Americans and affect the innocent. We're not going to waste time reporting on things where the end is just to say, well, the government lied. The reason we're doing the Fitzgerald and the McCain is because 19 sailors are dead. There are 19 families without justice, and now we have 6 sailors that are going to be thrown under the bus for their lie. That's why we're covering it. And I want to say once again a big thank you to Jennifer Hammonds yesterday for finally taking up the gauntlet, having the guts to do it, and help get the word out and help report this. However, we do have another vein to cover in this channel, and it's, to my mind, as important as any story out there. We have covered this ongoing war, the ceasefire, the end of the ceasefire with the ELN and the FARC. Now there has been an attack by the AGC. Now this is my wheelhouse. This is what I did in the military. I was a Spanish linguist. I was an interrogator. This was a long time ago, but the issues down there are primarily the same. And Panama is in a very, very, very weak position right now. They have the tiniest military, one of the tiniest in the entire world. By far the smallest in all of Central and South America, all of Latin America. But finally, everything the channel has been saying has been now reported by, of all people, a Jewish newspaper. Now, I know a lot of you don't like Israel, but they've nailed it. They have absolutely nailed the connection between Hezbollah and the Venezuelans and have outlined the threat. Now, this latest attack in Colombia, we have documented all of the others where they're trying to cut the country in half. They've knocked a helicopter out of the sky. They have bombed a bridge. They have taken hostages. They have bombed pipelines. All within the last month. And they're attempting to cut, and these are all pro-Chavista, pro-Venezuelan activists until now. The AGC, or Clan de Golfo, these guys are actually aligned with the Sinaloan Mexican drug cartels. These guys are more money-driven than they are ideology-driven. The ELN and the FARC, while yes, they do trade in drugs, they use the money to finance their ideologies. So the AGC, I think, has taken an opportunity here to exact some revenge, take some power, and under the cover of what's happening and what's coming from Venezuela. See, the argument down there with the U.S. becoming now ever so much more isolationist than it has been in the last 8 years is that these people are going to look elsewhere for security and for alliances and for their future. And the Russians have been nothing but more than helpful. We've documented the deal, the Venezuelan side, for the 60,000 tons of wheat a month in perpetuity from Russia. That, we documented, was available cheaper from Argentina. We've documented that the large ships that go through the Panama Canal, the big Panamax ships, the gas ships, they are pulled through by tugboats. Very, very large tugboats. Supplied by who? Venezuela. Where in Venezuela? The PDVSA. That's the state-run oil company. They supply the tugs. Who owns the PDVSA? Rosneft. Rosneft is the state-run oil company for Russia. So, in effect, by proxy, Russia is controlling the biggest ships that go through the canal. We've also documented that there are Tu-160 Russian backfire bombers stationed in Venezuela. We have also documented that there are Russian warships stationed in Managua, Nicaragua. We don't need to talk about the Russian influence in Cuba or the Russian design on the vast oil reserves in Venezuela, 300 billion barrels, bigger than even under Saudi Arabia. And now we have this. The absence, the vacuum of U.S. influence in the area has now brought the Russians and Chinese in. And you can read this. This is Telesur. If you folks are getting your news from our mainstream media, you're wasting your time. You will find so much better information. You can read the South China Morning Post. They actually talk about a lot of things that are going on in the world. Telesur, BRICS, BRICS, the Pan Am Post, Columbia Reports. They talk about things in this hemisphere, and there's very little politics involved in a lot of it. There isn't some, but in a lot of it, you just get information that you're not getting here in America. And the one thing that's happened with these sanctions in Venezuela, they were absolutely one of the most foolish things that we did, because there was a way out of these sanctions that didn't require the Venezuelans to bend the knee to the U.S. and say, okay, you're right, we're going to be, capitalists now. They've had access to vast amount of drug money and Russian money and Chinese money. They've signed medicine deals with the Indians. Even Brazil is signing wheat deals with the Russians. And we're all on the outside looking in. They're going to recover. We've already seen gas go up. And the higher gas gets, the more lucrative Venezuela becomes. People are going to dump money into it because they have all that oil. And if the Venezuelans themselves can't create the infrastructure to get it out from underneath the ground, then somebody else will, and it won't be the U.S. And it'll be a very, very dangerous paradigm to have them that close on our southern border. This, to me, is the biggest story in all reporting. I don't even know the term to use. This is going to be, if anything takes the U.S. down, this is going to be it. Because it's going to happen here. Now, just to show the map, just to give you guys an idea, folks, whether it was intentional or not, or whether you believe it's the case or not, the perception is this. The U.S. doesn't want anything to do with Mexico, and the Mexico doesn't want anything to do with us. Guatemala, El Salvador are run by gangs. Honduras and Nicaragua are now proxy client states of the Russians. They just are. When you have Russian warships docked in Nicaragua and Daniel Ortega in charge, it just is what it is. Remember the Cuban issue with the U.S. diplomats being attacked? That's got Russia all over it. Haiti, the Dominican. The Dominican is where Maduro felt safe enough to do his negotiations. So there's no U.S. influence there. The issue with Puerto Rico, that's going to be a tough one. Then we have ALBA and CELAC, ALBA, and CELAC, CELAC. These are groups put together that have designs on reuniting the entire region under one flag. We see all these little tiny, what we call banana republics, but the Russians and the Chinese see this as all one region, and they treat them as such. And mark my words, that day's coming when this is all going to blow up and it's going to fall back together as one place. It absolutely is. They've got the internal resources, they've got the people, and they've got something the world wants. And the biggest thing they have the world wants right now is their anti-American sentiment. And the last two places of U.S. influence are right here. And this is not going to go ignored. Mark my words, this is not going to go ignored. These people over here are going to eventually get sick and tired enough of being sick and hungry and under attack from U.S. sanctions. They're going to take it. The Russian-Chinese tie is going to be too undeniable, and it's going to go down. Now, the article I talked about, it's Jewish Policy Center, but they absolutely nail this about the narco state meeting Hezbollah. They've had designs down there for decades. This isn't anything new. And they talk about all of the people that the U.S. has indicted and charged with crimes, including the vice president. This takes it right up to Tariq al-Assami. This article was put out 22 hours ago. And so this is very, very new. But it details everything the channel has been saying. I mean, absolutely almost some things verbatim. The country's economy is a seemingly endless downward spiral, yet the regime retains control. That's partly because of the collusion of officials at the highest levels of power with drug cartels whose limitless financial resources keep Maduro and his cronies afloat. The implications for Washington are extremely damaging, and not simply in terms of the drugs and violence flowing across the southern border. In al-Assami's case, 5 of the 13 entities sanctioned were Miami-based LLCs. Their illicit activity compromises the integrity of the U.S. financial system. And they detail this here, what they're saying. The bolivar that has now become worthless, like the Weimar Republic, where you just need barrels full of the paper. It's not the currency itself that they're seeking. It's the paper. And this is something that I hadn't even thought of. Down here, what it talks about is... Okay, let me get down to the point here. A case in point in the February 2017 discovery by Paraguayan law enforcement agencies of 25 tons of Venezuelan currency hidden in cloth sacks and stashed in the home of a weapons merchant in the frontier town of Salta de Guairia. I guess that's close enough. On the Paraguay-Brazil border. 2 of the suspects have criminal records for arms smuggling. The money, mostly in 100 bolivar notes, had been rendered worthless by hyperinflation. Venezuela suddenly announced it was withdrawing the bills from circulation in December 2016, causing a run on the banks. Even before they ceased being legal tender, the bills were only worth a few U.S. cents apiece, but had one redeeming quality. They are made with the same quality paper produced by the U.S. supplier to the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and are therefore a favored choice for counterfeiting U.S. currency. If turned into $100 bills, the useless bolivars would be suddenly have been worth $2 billion. That's huge. That is absolutely huge. It could actually... Someone could make the case that maybe someone wanted the bolivar to become worthless so that they would have access to this paper and make it profitable to be so. Suspicions of narco-Hezbollah connections were also confirmed by local sources. In communications with one of the authors, local intelligence officials confirmed that Hezbollah operatives in the area have been seeking bolivars for months. They also seek a link between those arrested and another local Hezbollah operative. So clearly, the Iranians have designs, and Hezbollah has designs on setting up camp in our backyard and using U.S. protectionism and U.S. fear of the southern border and U.S. The lack of involvement of U.S. involvement in the region, the vacuum of power, to set up basically operations in the Western Hemisphere. It'll make it a hell of a lot easier to take down the U.S. government if they can do it from 500 miles away or 1,000 miles away. And he says that here, the Bolivar seizure, one of many in the area since 2015, illustrates the potential repercussions of paying insufficient attention to the boiling crisis in Venezuela. The country is a failed narco state run by a clique of greedy anti-American ideologues in cahoots with Islamic radicals beholden to Iran, the world's foremost state sponsor of terror. As long as the Maduro regime governs in Caracas, the crisis that is consuming Venezuela will further strengthen Washington's enemies in the Western Hemisphere. Developing a coherent strategy to address this deadly convergence of threats should continue to be a high priority for U.S. policymakers. And it's not a strategy at all. It's not even on the radar. No one's even talking about it. The vice president of Venezuela is a Syrian Druze tied to Hezbollah. How many more ways can you say it? So anyway, 14 minutes. I do appreciate everyone's support with the issues with the Fitzgerald and the McCain. We have covered it to the point of exhaustion. If there's any particular point that someone would like more information on, there's a video we've covered on it. Honestly, if you go to my page and you look through, we have covered it from soup to nuts, from the beginning to the end, the stories, the lies, the strange movements. Yesterday we covered that they switched transponders aboard the Crystal. The political things going on at the time, the launches, the missions. We've put 6 destroyers directly over cables. We've even put the Crystal over cables. It's a very, very, very clear thing to anybody with a reasonable mind that we have 5 sailors being thrown under the bus for a very big secret. So like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. We'll see you next time. Thank you.